Well, good morning, and we want to welcome you to the Indiana Clean School Bus Consortium webinar. My name is Carl Lissick with Drive Clean Indiana, and the Drive Clean Indiana team will be acting as your host and administrative sponsor for this and upcoming Indiana Clean School Bus Consortium events. We've got another great webinar today and have some wonderful news to share. Let's just review the agenda today, and we'll be focusing on some of the success and some of the current opportunities that are out with US EPA. So just to kind of talk about some of the things that we'll be talking about, we'll have our welcome and housekeeping, Drive Clean Indiana update, and our US EPA update with Carter Granberg and Tony Maeda, and then questions and answers. So as you're going through, and if there's anything that you have questions on, please put it in the chat and we will read those questions as time permits. So with that, next slide, please. So just a little overview. As many of you know, Drive Clean Indiana, we are Indiana's only designated Clean Cities Coalition working across the state of Indiana on clean mobility, clean alternative fuels here for the state. So if you have any questions on any of the alternative fuels, please feel free to reach out to us. Next slide, please. So with that, I would like to introduce our guide and our host for today's webinar. Mr. Carter Granberg and Tony Maeda will be on the horn here also to answer questions. So Carter, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Carl. Hi, everyone. Going to be providing a bit of an overview today. We have some big updates. The 2023 Clean School Bus Rebate Program launched. So want to give a good overview of what that program is going to look like, what the differences are to our past funding opportunities, and then give some more practical information about how you can apply, as well as some next steps and resources that we and the National EPA has pointed to as helpful for schools. So with that, just want to start by giving a quick overview. This seems to trip up people a lot, and we use these terms interchangeably. We've seen other people use them interchangeably sometimes, so want to just kind of clarify what the differences are. This is going to be a rebate program. We also have a grant program that is currently wrapping up, being graded right now. Awards will be announced relatively soon. We will have more grant programs for likely in the foreseeable future. But I just want to highlight what those differences are so you can decide if a rebate program is appropriate for you. So one of the key differences is in the application process with rebates. You're going to have a much more streamlined, simple process. It's a simple application you're going to do through an online portal compared to grants where you're going to be putting together basically a very hefty application. You're going to be detailing a game plan. You're going to be formally submitting that with the intent of it being graded by the EPA against other work plans. The selection process for rebates, similarly more simple. It's going to be more of a random number generated lottery system to pick awardees. We, in the past, on our last rebate program, saw that there were certain applicants that were prioritized, which I'll get to in a few slides. This time around, there's more leeway so that prioritized and non-prioritized applicants have a good shot at getting a school bus. Long story short, and I'll talk about this more later on, any school district within the state of Indiana should have a shot at getting a bus through the rebate program. So this really opens the door to a lot more schools. There's no more of that kind of priority hurdle that schools need to cross over. If you are a priority school, which I'll talk about, you'll have a good shot at getting a school bus, but other schools will also have a fair shot at getting them as well. Grants, like I said, are going to be more of a graded system where you're going to send the application, it's going to be graded. If you are selected under the rebate, you would have less input from the EPA. You would be expected to kind of follow through the program on your own and finish up the program on your own. With grants, it's a little bit more hand-holding. There's going to be more reporting you need to do to the EPA. There's going to be more checking in coming from the EPA. It's a little bit more of a back and forth process. The other big difference here, and this is where it might ultimately decide if a rebate or a grant is more appropriate to you, the number of replacement for school buses is going to be a little smaller for rebates, where grants is intending to have a much higher count of school buses for larger fleets and third-party applicants. So just to highlight some of those main points there, rebates are efficient, they're quick for you receiving your funding. They are for school districts or third parties that are looking for a lower number of school buses, which is perfect for first-time adopters who want to maybe just dip their toe in the water of electric school buses or clean school buses like propane and compressed natural gas buses. Also good for small fleets that aren't looking to replace a large number of buses. And then one of the key benefits here is that they are simple and straightforward, and so is the selection process. And then you basically just get your funds and buy your buses. It's not as intense as the grants are. So want to zoom in a little bit more on what the specific details are for this round of rebates, which are different in smaller ways than our last round of rebates. So going to highlight some of that here. There are new eligible applicants that can apply. So state and local government entities that are responsible for providing bus services to one or more public school systems can apply. Public charter school districts can apply. Indian tribes, tribal organizations, or tribally controlled schools that provide buses to schools, to Bureau-funded schools can apply. All of these schools can be found on EPA's website, on the EPA Clean School Bus website, if you want to see where a school district falls on this chart. Nonprofit school transportation associations can now apply, and eligible contractors like OEM dealers, private school bus fleets are open to apply as well. So the door is opened a lot more to who can apply for these buses. And some changes, so I was hinting at this a little bit earlier. In our last round of rebates, we had certain criteria that were given out by the EPA of what would make a school prioritized. This time around, they've shifted that criteria a little bit. So I don't have the number up here, but about 60% of all applicants that will be awarded are going to be from this prioritized pool, while 40% now will come from non-prioritized schools. So they are setting aside a 40% of the funds to specifically non-prioritized schools, which really just opens the door to any public school coming in and applying and having a shot at getting one of these school buses. But the changes are, they are doing high need school districts are still being prioritized in low income areas. So that is 20% or more students living in poverty according to the SAPE, Small Area Income and Poverty Estimates. They updated the information to 2021. Last year was 2020. There's a bit of a lagging effect. So they use data that's a couple years behind. Some of the big differences, though, are that Title I funded public school districts not listed in SAPE data can come in and self-certify. And if you are a large public school district, so you have more than 35,000 students or more than 45 public schools within your district that don't meet that 20% SAPE threshold, they can self-certify as well, as long as they have at least one school that is Title I funded. So again, just more opening the door for more schools. The rural, so last time around there was rural prioritization. They've changed the rural prioritization. So now only schools with locality code 43, this is the most rural remote, will be considered priority schools. The Indian tribal schools are untouched. So any Indian tribal schools or schools that receive funding from Indian tribal lands will be considered priority schools as well. These are subject to change going forward. As you saw, they changed this time around. They might be different. They're kind of, it looks like taking what worked from the grant program, what got positive feedback. So this is open to shifting, which is all to say, if you are having issues with how this rural, how rural, how high need, how these different priority criteria are being measured, you are encouraged to reach out to the Clean School Bus at epa.gov email and voice those concerns. They are very receptive to feedback that's been given so far over the life of the program. Oh, and yeah, here's a slide. I just highlighting those big program change. Before we saw in the last round of rebates, essentially 100% of the funds did go to priority applicants, which capped out anyone who wasn't a priority school district. This time around, they are setting aside 40% of those funds. So non-priority school districts have a shot at getting money as well. But still, the majority, 60%, will go towards those priority applicants. So I'm not gonna read off every single number on this slide, but just want to highlight that there are some changes to the funding levels. So there seemed to be some concern that the EPA set a price of how much they would give for a bus, and coincidentally, all of the bus companies turned around, and we saw some fluctuations in prices. We also know that there's supply chain issues still in certain areas, and the EPA didn't want to be responsible for controlling, kind of setting the price of school buses, wanted to give more leeway to school districts and third parties for kind of picking the buses they need, picking the parts they need, shopping around, doing a little bit more research. So it looks like the EPA is slightly lowering the pricing of that they're giving out for the buses with the hopes that this will kind of lower the overall price of the technology going forward and make buses more accessible to school districts in general. Depending on which type of replacement vehicle you're looking at, there's different funding levels available. The funding is now meant to be for both the bus and the charging infrastructure interchangeably. So before there was like a set number of dollars that would go towards the bus and a set number of dollars that could go towards infrastructure. Now it would be a collective pool that school districts or third parties could pull from and fund how they see fit for their replacements. On the far right of this table, I just want to highlight a couple changes in those three boxes. If you are getting an ADA compliant bus, you could get an additional 20K towards that vehicle to help with those upgrades. If there are high shipping costs to like Hawaii or territories that might be outside of the continental 48 states, an additional $28,000 per bus to cover those high shipping costs. And there, EPA is being a little cautious of this. We don't want to be giving tax advice, but do want to highlight that there are IRA tax credits potentially eligible depending on your state, depending on what you're getting for replacement vehicles. So it's worth looking into different tax credits that might be available on a state and federal level for those vehicles to help offset some of those costs. Additionally, and I'm sure to be talking about it in this coalition at future dates, there are more Indiana-based incentives and programs that might help offset or be a good supplement to some of these programs and costs from the funding of these rebates. So there is also a table just highlighting the different replacement fuel types. And depending on which type of bus you're looking at getting, so propane, compressed natural gas, or battery electric, the program will allow you, depending on which one, to replace certain types of buses. So the cutoff seems to be 2010 or an older diesel bus. You can apply to get anything. Anything newer than that seems to only be battery electric would be allowed for replacement. So just something to keep in mind when you are considering upgrading your fleet. And all this information that I'm highlighting is available at the EPA Clean School Bus website. So if this is something you want to spend a little more time studying, please, I encourage you to go to that website and look it over and reach out if you have any questions. Another change to the program is this is more of a clarification, not so much a change. There was some confusion on the last round of rebates with what counted as eligible infrastructure. So there's changing in some wording. There is behind the meter, which is basically everything after the transformer, the electric meter, to the panel, to the charging stations, to the infrastructure to actually charge the buses itself, to potentially storage of energy units. That's all now eligible, and it's been much more clarified. When you apply for a rebate and you are going through the paperwork of what you can apply for, that is more clearly spelled out than it was the last time. So hopefully that will alleviate some confusion. We took a lot of feedback we got from the first round of rebates, and we upgraded the guidance that's given when you are applying to make this a lot more clear. So I want to highlight now, if you are interested or considering, what would be those next steps on how to apply and what resources could you look at? So pretty straightforward. Again, that's one of the benefits of rebates. They're pretty simplified. You are going to go to the Clean School Bus website. It's the subpage within the EPA website. You want to also make sure you register your organization with sam.gov. This is an important one that a lot of school districts or third-party organizations have unintentionally overlooked. And what winds up happening is they get their rebate, but then they cannot receive their funds because we cannot send funds unless you have a current sam.gov registration. So even if you are registered, it's worth it. And we recommend once a year, maybe just double checking and making sure your registration is up to date and not about to expire. And make sure that that would not prevent you from getting any funds should you be accepted the rebate. You will complete your application form online. There might be some supplemental application forms depending on what you are applying for, but all of that will be spelled out on the website. And then you would be expected to submit your application by January 31st, 2024 at 4 p.m. Eastern time. So they stretched it out, I believe, a little bit more this time around. There's a bit of a bigger window for applying, if I'm recalling correctly. And if you have any questions, again, feel free to reach out. We're happy to help. Our job is to streamline this process and make you feel empowered to apply. So again, a lot of this is information. I believe these slides are handed out and I wanted you to have it. I'm not going to hit on every bullet here, but if you were to take these slides, some useful information about how the selection and notification process happens. Again, 60% of funding would go towards prioritized school districts. All applications are going to go into a random number generator lottery process. It is not a first come, first served basis. It's based on a lottery system. So wherever you apply within that window, you have just as much a shot as another school district, depending on your priority level of getting a school bus. We will work through the random number thing. We'll assign kind of a ranking for school districts, and we will work through that ranking one by one until funds have been allocated for both halves of the funding for priority and not priority. I believe if a school district is to return their funds or decide they don't want a school bus, then it goes to the next person on the list. So your ranking on that random order generated list would hold. EPA will also, just due to the mandate of the program and the wording of the law, we will select at least one application per state or territory. So no matter, even if hypothetically no one applied or there was very little applications, at least one person from Indiana, which is we're not concerned about. We saw the last round of rebates and what we've heard of grants. There's quite a bit of interest in Indiana, but prioritized applications will be selected within each funding pool. And then, like I said, applicants not selected will remain on a wait list. And if things shake out where other applicants drop off, there might be a chance for those applicants to get their place instead. Just some helpful links and resources. Again, if these slides are sent out, I believe these are things that I recommend looking at. There's technical assistance if you're looking at trying to understand more of the technical aspects of clean school buses, whether that be propane, compressed natural gas, or electric, as well as their associated fueling and charging infrastructure. What does that look like? What do you need? How much does it cost? What is practical for your situation? Those are useful links to learn about that. There's some useful information about bus manufacturer jobs and workforce development, as well as training resources. If you have repair, mechanics, people who might be interested in more like working on the buses, what resources are available to them, as well as general educational materials. So benefits of clean school buses. There's reports to Congress that have tons and tons of useful information and links, studies, different nonprofit group input in there. Worth looking those over if this is something that interests you and you want to find other information. But again, like I've been saying throughout this presentation, all this information and these links can be found at that epa.gov/cleanschoolbus. The other big change to the program was a utility pledge. So we saw some issues with school districts and utility companies or third parties and utility companies not being on maybe the same page, or kind of a school district applies and doesn't totally understand the implication of getting a bunch of infrastructure. So this is now more of a formality to make sure that school districts and utility companies are kind of on the same page going into this agreement. They're going to work with each other. It's to smooth over potential conflicts that may arise down the road as a school district or third party applicant starts actually upping their infrastructure with the funds from this program. So there'll be more information about that to come, but you can also find greater detail about it on our website, or if you're applying, it will be one of the application materials you'll be looking over. So just a highlight of different deadlines. The program launched in late September. We are in the middle of the application window right now. There will be ongoing webinars that should be recorded, I believe, but you can go again to epa.gov/cleanschoolbus to see upcoming ones, watch them in real time, look at recorded ones. Final date to submit questions you may have about the program is January 10th, so 2-3 weeks before the actual deadline. So be sure to, if you have questions right now, to start gathering them and formally submitting them so that you can get answers in a timely manner and be ready to submit. And that application is due 4 p.m. Eastern time on January 31st. There will be a review process, and then once the random number generator is applied, they're anticipating having a selection by April 2024. And then between April and October 2024, there would be this, we'll talk more about this down the road when we're done with the application process for school districts listening that might not be familiar, but there is a payment request form. You submit rebate paperwork, and the EPA works with you just to make sure that the rebate paperwork is correct and that you get your funds in a timely manner. And then by the end of 2026 would be kind of the deadline of when you'd be expected to have implemented or April 2026 is when you'd be expected to have implemented your clean school buses, done your infrastructure upgrades, and kind of finished the rebate more or less. Not going to go over all these, but these are on our website too. This is just a list of upcoming webinars that may be of interest to you. So we are at the 14th. I don't know what time this one is at, but it looks like there's a panel discussion happening today. If you are so inclined to jump on one of these webinars right away. Otherwise, it looks like there is 4 more going on throughout the rest of this year and into early next year. So a little off of the rebate and national level, zooming in more now, talking about our coalition and us here today right now. So we are looking for an outreach opportunity. Since all school districts in Indiana are eligible to apply, and what we saw looking at the last round of rebates, the states that had the most number of applications, proportionally, we saw them receive the most number of school buses. So it seems to be a numbers game. We wanted to take this opportunity to try and enhance outreach and bring as many school districts as we could into the fold, and at the very least, just notify them of this opportunity in this program. So we are looking for a coalition member. That I know in the past we've talked to some people, but to potentially send out a general rebate notification that we've drafted up, we're welcome to work on it with other people in the coalition if they'd like to offer input into the notice and letter. If there's resources that they want to contribute, like different funding opportunities they want to mention, and make sure that different school districts are aware of on top of this federal program, that we would encourage you to reach out to us, Tony or myself, and let us know. But we're ultimately looking for a coalition member that'd be willing to send out a notice to all school districts within the state of Indiana. It would have a flyer from us, that's our main contribution, as well as an invite to join this coalition. So doubles as informing them and encouraging them to apply, as well as a outreach effort to try and get recruitment for this coalition and build it up a bit more and inject more school districts that are interested in. We now have some school districts in this coalition that have gone through the process, so it'd be good to start mixing school districts that have gone through upgrading their fleet with school districts that are interested in upgrading their fleet, and thought this would be a prime opportunity to do that. If you are interested in helping in any regard, please feel free to reach out. You can reach me anytime at cranberg.carter@epa.gov. I'd love to just chat with you about this opportunity a little bit. And again, not going to go over this. This is just a summary for you guys. If you download these slides, this is a very quick bullet point list of everything I talked about in these slides, so that way you don't have to go back and click through everything. You can just kind of quickly read through here and get the same information distilled down a lot simpler. I believe this goes on for 2 slides. So yeah, it's all the information I was talking about, just a little bit more streamlined and easy to digest. Thank you.
Thank you, Carter. And again, folks, if you have questions, please put those in the chat. And again, if you are interested in any of this information, Drive Clean Indiana is here to help with the Indiana Clean School Bus Coalition and just provide resources. Again, we are talking now about EPA funding. There are other grants that we'll be talking about, and through the Indiana Clean School Bus Consortium. So we are just here to help provide information, and if you need additional information or would like some assistance in regards to grants, things like that, please feel free to reach out to Ryan at drivecleanindiana.org. So next slide, please. So I think, just again, some of the things that we're working on, we represent the Indiana, through Drive Clean Indiana, we represent all the alternative fuels. And again, one of the things is we are just trying to provide you with information and education in regards to what's currently available across the state of Indiana. So throughout the state, there are different grants that are going to be available, and we are going to be talking more about those as our coalition continues to expand across the different dates and things that we have planned. So next slide, please. So again, as Carter pointed out, there's questions and things, and we'll have we have got some time here to go through a couple of the items. But I also wanted to talk to you today about some upcoming opportunities that we are aware of. One of the things that I will let you know through the VW mitigation, Sean Seals, who's the co-chair for the Indiana Clean School Bus Coalition, was unavailable to be on this webinar today, but we are anticipating before the end of this calendar year through the VW mitigation, which was the Volkswagen mitigation, opportunities for upcoming grants for clean diesel projects throughout the state of Indiana. So these grants were available for school buses in the past, and we're still contemplating, or we're still waiting to hear if the state VW mitigation will allow clean school buses to be part of that application, but that the majority of the clean school buses that have been deployed prior to the US EPA grants were deployed through the Volkswagen grant. So hopefully there will be one more round, like I said, coming out very shortly before the end of the calendar year. And this will be one of the areas that will be one of the platforms, if you will, that you'll hear more about that grant as it becomes available. We are planning another round or another webinar for December 5th at the same time. So we will have additional information on the US EPA project. So if you have additional questions that haven't been answered by that time, Carter and Tony Maeda will be available for that. So again, we'll continue on. And then what we also like to do is ask you for input. What other things that you would like to see provided through the Indiana Clean School Bus Coalition? And I know we were talking in regards to electric school bus deployment, propane school bus deployment. And one of the questions we always have is, if we take a field trip, will it be charging or propane availability? And I will tell you that we've been working on that for a couple of years with various partners. So that's something we'll be talking about in upcoming activities. And then also, I know that Carter had just mentioned some of the opportunities with the utility engagement, and we have been involved. The majority of all of our utilities in the state of Indiana have been working with us on the deployment of electric charging stations. And so we will have an update that we can provide with you on the next upcoming webinar. So we feel very confident with the deployment of the electric school buses, and then where the locations of those electric school charging stations will be located. And then we'd like to give you an update on some of the grants that we've applied for with the state, and hopefully we'll have some awards potentially that could be discussed at one of our upcoming webinars. So with that, I would just add a couple of questions that we have gotten. And Tony or Carter, maybe you could talk about another grant opportunity that is currently available through the Diesel Emission Reduction Act. And I wonder if you could just touch on that, Carter or Tony.
Yeah, I can do that. This is Tony. Hello, everybody. Thank you to Carter for he did a really good job explaining the current school bus funding that's out there for the bipartisan infrastructure law. There is the Diesel Emission Reduction Act, and we call it DERA because we love acronyms in the government. And the Diesel Emission Reduction Act allows for on-road vehicle replacements. So school buses are considered an on-road medium to heavy-duty diesel engine, so class 5 through class 8 heavy-duty diesel engines. They have to run 7,000 miles a year in order to be eligible. But if they do run 7,000 miles a year or more, you can get 25% of the cost of a replacement diesel vehicle. You can get 35% of the cost of a replacement vehicle that meets the California Air Resources Board's low NOx certification. So primarily you're going to be looking at propane, CNG school buses that would meet that. And then you can get 45% of the cost of a new electric bus. Now, the 45% of the cost does not, for DERA, unlike the rebate program that's currently open, the DERA program doesn't really fund the infrastructure portion, but if you're just looking for buses, you know, that is another option for you there. And the webpage there is epa.gov/DERA, DERA.
Well, thank you, Tony. And again, I think, so we have the US EPA DERA grant allocations, and then we also have the state of Indiana DERA applications that Sean Seals, co-chair of this coalition, also manages. So I do have a question, Tony and Carter, that came in. I know you talked about grants.gov and the importance of that for any of the grants that are available from the federal government. And so, you know, that's one of the things that I think that Tony and Carter had mentioned is, you know, through grant stuff, make sure that whoever, if you are applying for any federal grants, that your school corporation definitely needs to be registered on grants.gov, and then connectivity with your utility provider. And if you don't have that information, that's something through the Indiana Clean School Bus Coalition that we've been working with all the clean school bus utility providers here in our state, you know, to connect with them. So first, make sure you're connected with the grants.gov, and then the second call would be either to us or to your utility provider to make sure that if you're applying for electric school buses, to be engaged with your utility. And so that's two of the recommendations that we've seen across the state. And then, you know, working with propane and natural gas. Again, if you have any questions in regards to some of the providers, we want to promote Indiana vendors here in our state, and we've been working across the state and working with qualified vendors in our state. So please feel free to reach out. So another question that just came up, Tony and Carter, would be, can I leverage federal grants? That was a question that just came up.
Well, okay. I'm going to let Carter expound on this if I get anything or I miss anything here. You can leverage funding for the federal programs, the DERA and the BIL programs, but you cannot leverage with other federal money. So if you got a DERA grant and then you got a BIL rebate, for example, you couldn't mix the two. But if you were to get, for example, state funding, so from IDEM, or if you were to get, you know, something local or anything that's not another federal award, you could match with that. And then the one other thing I do want to add that I missed on my prior little spiel is sam.gov is the other webpage too that all schools are going to want to join. It's the system for awards management, and that's how EPA actually does, you know, give out the funding. And if you're going to apply for the rebate, you're going to need to be up to date on sam.gov just to get into the application. So long story short, you can leverage funding as long as it's just not matching federal with federal funds.
Thank you, Tony. So another question that came out, I applied with Drive Clean Indiana on the Indiana Clean School Bus Grant to EPA. Should I still apply for a rebate using the same school buses?
Tony, I don't want to misspeak, so I believe that's okay, but
yeah, that's a little bit of a gray area. So if you applied in a prior round, up until you know if you did get selected, I would say yes. If you have extra buses that aren't the ones you already applied for, start with those. But if you don't have any extra buses, I mean, it's not a bad idea to have more irons in the fire, you know what I mean? But however, if it does happen that, you know, you put in an application for a rebate, but then you already had a past application that does get funded, that current, you know, the newer application, you're going to have to probably swap out buses with that application. So just generally make sure that, you know, is to the best extent possible, you're putting in different buses because again, like it could be possible that they'll make you choose, you know, if you were to get selected for both.
So another question, Tony and Carter, can I order a bus prior to an award?
No, those awards you would want to wait until you were actually selected, and then you would initiate that process. And part of both of these processes, if it's a grant or rebate, you're going to put in a purchase request form first. So it would be something where you get selected, and that's when you start shopping around for the bus and putting in your paperwork to buy it.
And not to put you both in here's a tough question that I can't answer, and I don't know if you can answer, but what happens if there's a government shutdown? Again, I know we're hearing on the news, and I don't know if you can comment on this, Tony or Carter, but what happens if there's a government shutdown? Should we, you know, should we continue with our grant applications I guess maybe I shouldn't look into this too much, but what happens if there's a government shutdown? That is the question.
I would continue to apply. The web pages aren't going to turn off. You know, the proposed dates are going to kind of be what they are. I do have a feeling that, you know, there a couple, a couple weeks, months ago, there was we were up at the cusp of a shutdown before this. And at that time, the grant application period was open. And I do know that the BIL and the Inflation Reduction Act programs are not, they're the sort of funding that like is not shut down with the government shutdown. So I think some of the lights will still be left on for the school bus funding programs. It's not 100% clear, like, would Carter be around? Would I be around? Maybe not, but like somebody from EPA probably will be. So I would say yes. The other thing is, if, you know, the real, what's the word I'm looking for? Like the real true test of whether it is, you know, open or not, go to the web page. And if the web page says, hey, we're shut down, you know, it's shut down. But if the web page is there and allows you to put in an application, I would definitely put one in.
Yeah, I'll just add on one last detail and say it's probably better to get your stuff in still, even if we're in limbo, and have your stuff waiting on us than the other way around. If we open back up, and I'm just speculating, they could potentially extend deadlines for things, but they might not, and then it would have been in your benefit to have just submitted it anyway.
Thank you very much. So again, just for the consortium benefit, again, some of the things that we are planning are some white papers from the state of Indiana, some additional speakers from across the state, and some national speakers to talk about other grants and other things that are going on and other implementations, successful implementations as resources for our group. And then, you know, again, as other funding becomes available from other federal agencies, again, EPA has obviously been one of the leaders, but also we do know that there are some other grant opportunities that will become available. So just to make those aware, and then we are aware of some funding that might be available for specific school corporations in different parts of the state through some of our utility partners, things like that. So we'll be featuring some of those. And again, utilization of the website, the Drive Clean Indiana Clean School Bus website is just the resource. And again, I think what you can hear is, you know, Sean, Tony, Carter, myself, we're available to help clarify questions. There are things that Tony and Carter can't talk about once a grant becomes available, or Sean becomes once a grant becomes available. But since we are not, we're not official, we're a nonprofit, we can, you know, potentially help with questions on previous grant applications. So as you're typing in any questions, I just wanted to also mention, you know, save the date. We are planning our 25th celebration of the origin of Drive Clean Indiana, South Shore Clean Cities. And so we're planning our annual meeting at the National Truck Equipment Association show, which I know many folks from Indiana, many of our fleet managers from across the state of Indiana. So we'll be hosting a breakfast on March 7th, 2024 at the JW Marriott. So please put that on your agenda, save the date list, and we'll have more information coming on that, coming up on that, how you can register for that. And we've got a whole plethora of events, webinars, things that are being planned for next year. And I can't believe that, you know, we're running into the Thanksgiving period here. But Danielle, do you have any additional questions that have come in?
There was a question about the date, the 5th, December 5th. Is there something happening on the 5th when it comes down to these tax credits? Sorry, that's what the question is that we have.
Okay, for December 5th, basically it is our webinar. It'll be our next planned webinar for the Indiana Clean School Bus Coalition. I'm not aware of any tax activities that are due, probably not till the end of the calendar year, but December 5th will be the Indiana Clean School Bus webinar. Well, what we're looking for is additional information. Tony and Carter and Sean will be available to give updates on the rebate program, potentially some of the other additional grant programs that we are looking for, some national and state sponsors to talk about other activities and how we can strengthen our Indiana Clean School Bus Coalition for 2024. So anything else, Danielle?
Nope, that is all we have for questions on my end.
Wonderful. Tony and Carter, any closing remarks before we break?
I did actually have one really quick. As schools here are potentially receiving school buses from the rebate round that we just had, the 2022 rebate round, please send photos to Tony and I. We would love to, I sent out some emails to the school districts, but we would love to promote those within the region, within the coalition, and just kind of brag about you guys getting your buses. So please, please send that our way. Also, if you're having any type of publicity event for the buses you're getting, let us know. We'd be happy to try and make it out there and show our support for you getting your buses.
Yeah, thank you, Carter. And again, I think, with that note, we have done some unveiling of some school buses that have been deployed in our state that have been on the Indiana Clean School Bus um, uh, slides and information. So same thing. We want to share all the great things that are going on in our Hoosier state. And again, utilizing your success, our success of working collectively together to highlight the great work that we're doing in our state, and then future opportunities. So we do think that sharing this information is very important in highlighting the great work that's going on with our school corporations. Again, not only with our transportation managers, with our business managers, our superintendents, and our community partners, which is very important to highlight, clean air, and working collectively together to improve, transportation and mobility with student transport here in the state. So with that, I would say, Danielle, if we don't have any other questions, our next Indiana Clean School Bus Consortium meeting will be December 5th. Please feel free to email us with any suggestions or comments, things that you would like to see. And we look forward to working with everyone. And again, utilizing us as a resource for, questions that you might have. And I just wanted to wish you and your families a happy Thanksgiving. And then we'll see you on December 5th. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Carter.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.